So in this video, we have a woman who doesn't quite understand why a man would walk away from a child that he's learned wasn't his. All right. So I'm gonna let her talk and then I'll share my thoughts.
How can a man walk away from a child that he has been raising for 3, 5, 10, 15 years simply because the DNA test shows that he's not the biological father? Hear me out here. I'm not being insensitive. I know that his world has just been turned upside down. I know he feels betrayed. He's devastated. I empathize. I sympathize with his predicament.
See, this is the thing. Like, men are not looking for your empathy. We're not looking for your sympathy. What we want is for you to understand that that child is not ours, right? We have just learned that for the past whatever year that child is not ours. So because that child is not ours, we no longer feel obligated to take care of that child. And hey, if a man decides that he wants to continue, taking care of that child, being a father to that child, by all means, do your thing. But if a man decides that he doesn't want to be in that child's life anymore because that is not his seed, then you have to just respect and understand that. That's it. No sympathy, no empathy. Just understand that, you know what? That is no longer my responsibility. You lied to that person for how many years? That child is no longer my responsibility. Now it's your responsibility to educate that child on why this person is leaving.
However, how is one able to walk away from a child that one has bonded with, loved, nurtured, poured blood and sweat into, simply because the DNA test shows that you're not the biological father? I understand getting rid of the wife or the girlfriend. The word I actually want to use starts with a W and rhymes with sure. Get rid of the W. But the children or the child, the innocent child, it is flummoxing to me. Now, I'm not a man and I do not know how this impacts men. I also know that there's deep shame. But were I in that predicament, of course I would be devastated. I'd be hurt and betrayed. But then I'd let the children know or the child know. You may not be my biological child, but you're still my child. I love you. You're my child in my heart. I've bonded with you. I've raised you. So nothing changes. Now, I know a lot of men worry about, then I have to continue paying I have to pay child support now that we're not together. So what? I'd pay the child support. Because you know what? Even though everything has changed, nothing should have changed because it's still the child that I raised, bonded with, and loved.
See, it's easy for her to say, pay the child support. What you mean pay the child support? It's not my child, right? It's so easy that, when I hear her say that, she clearly just doesn't understand. This whole empathy, sympathy stuff, she just doesn't understand. Like, you're talking about man paying child support for a child that's not his. Your goal should be to find out who that child's father is and have that person put that person on child support. That is no longer that person's responsibility. But she clearly doesn't even understand. And I'm thinking, I was trying to come up with an example, right? To help, an example that would relate or to a guy's situation, right? And the only thing I could come up with is I'm not even sure if it's a good example. So y'all tell me, y'all let me know. But like, what if the woman, she just gave birth, right? And obviously the child comes out, and I'm not sure if they usually, what I see is they put a child in the room, right? You can tell I have no kids, but they usually put the babies in the room, and then they got a bunch of babies in that same room. I'm not sure if they do that anymore, but that's what I see. Now, what if for some reason the hospital, they took the wrong child and gave you another child, and you raise that child for the next 5 years, and then the hospital comes back and tells you that, we made a mistake. That child that you've been raising for the past 5 years is not your child. Okay, what would you do? How would you feel? First of all, I know the first thing there'll probably be a lawsuit, right? Obviously, but would you then say, what if the hospital said, you've been raising that child for 5 years, that's your child? Would you accept that? Like, would you accept that? Or would you want to say you want to know who your real child is, and you want to make that switch because you want your real child back? Well, that's how men feel. You've been raising the child for 5 years, and you find, but what's worse is that hospital made a mistake. That woman's been lying for however many years. That's worse, right? You've been lying. You knew about this, and you just allowed that man to raise that child, even though knowing that wasn't his. right? That's a level of betrayal that a lot of men don't. It's hard to recover from. So to say that, just continue to pay the child support and continue to love that child, no, it's no longer the man's responsibility. That is your responsibility. You need to find out who that child's real father is and get in contact with them, and then have them, take on the responsibility. Yes, it's tough for the child, but look, that's a situation that you put the child in. That's your problem, right? You need to be accountable and responsible for that child. That's not the man's fault. Whatever decision that man makes, that's his alone, right? And you need to respect that decision. Don't try to say that man needs to be accountable and continue to raise that child and be a father to that child. If he chooses not to do that, then that's his choice, and you got to respect that. But you can't then say that's his responsibility because he's been raising it, even though it's not his child, and you knew that. No, like most men would never deal with that level of betrayal, and nor should they.
And in an attempt not to pay child support, one ends up cutting off one's nose to spite one's face. Because you got to look at the big picture, the relationship with that child, the continued relationship, and the ability to go ahead and raise and nurture that child because you already have that bonded relationship. But once again, because I'm not a man, I do not understand how anybody can walk away from a child. Story time. My husband had a boss about 20 years ago. This gentleman's son had some medical issues. And to make a long story short, he found out that his 19-year-old son was not his biological child. Needless to say, he was devastated. But you know what? He had raised this child for 19 years, was paying for college. This was his son, and he was not going to let him go. And my heart broke for him, but I was so proud of this man because he did not walk away from his child. And I think at times some men might think walking away from the child is a way to punish the woman for her betrayal. But at the end of the day, the person you're hurting is the child. And I can't help but wonder, won't you be traumatized as a person walking away from someone that you've bonded with?
Of course. Like that trauma is always going to be there. If anything, it's going to make men not ever want to trust women, right? But it's still, the fact remains, if you have to understand, like nobody would understand, like in that situation, how a man is going to deal with that situation when encountered with that. Like no man has ever dealt with that. Like I can't say I've never dealt with that. It's not something that men just encounter every day until you're actually in that situation. So who knows what that man's state of mind is at that moment, right? It's not something you can prepare a person for, right? It's something there, it happens and you're like, damn, okay, what do you do? Like, how do you feel about that? Like, what kind of experiences have you had with the mother, the child? Like, these are things that you cannot, like, simulate, right? It's almost like, when this happens, it's like, damn, it's like, how do you react? So it's not something that you can prepare for. So if a man told me, like, if men said that, if a man told me that, like, this happened to him and he walked away, I'm not going to then judge that man and say, yo, you're a bad person because you walked away from your child. I'm like, hey, man, I respect that. I understand it. Like, because, like, I don't know if I was put in that situation, I could say right now, I'd be like, hell no. But like, how like 19 years, that's a huge time period for somebody to be bonded with a child. So who knows that type of connection, right? But if a man said that he wouldn't do it, and if I learned a man actually said he walked away, how could you be mad? I would just totally get it. But, for a lot of people, it's just like, you don't understand that. So it's just interesting to hear, especially the perspective of a woman, telling a man he should pay child support, he should continue to be in that child's life when you have no idea what that man is going through mentally, right? So those are my thoughts. Interested to hear your thoughts. Make sure you leave a comment down below with the like button, share, and if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe. So guys, take care. Have a good one. Later.